All right, if you want to call the Cocoon Club, go ahead, but it's got the young and the restless saying that that guy in Britain who's a lot like Bernie Sanders is all the rage to him. I'm talking about Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party head, who darn near beat an established party and Theresa May to become the next prime minister. That close, that big, and many would say that's Sanders-like. Jane Sanders, the wife of Bernie Sanders, joining me right now. Dr. Sanders, very good to have you.
Good to be here, Neil.
What did you make of what went on in Britain? It seemed very, I don't know, Bernie-like.
Yes, I think, Jeremy Corbyn was trying to do the same thing with the Labour Party as Bernie is trying to do with the Democratic Party, and bring it back to being the party of the working people. I think there's a lot of pain all over the world as we're seeing a resurgence of populist movements, some good, some not so good. But with Corbyn, I think we were over there just before that.
Were you really helping him out?
Yeah, we were actually had made arrangements to speak at a number of places before Theresa May called the elections. So it was a little bit tricky, but we didn't participate in the elections. But we talked about issues, and we heard Corbyn, and he was talking about the same things that Bernie talks about, as you're right. Although I must take a difference in your thinking there's a resurgence of these older guys who we thought were finished. I never thought that.
No, you never thought that. All right, I apologize. So let me ask you, Jane, a little bit about what's going on here, because the Labour Party, if you will, the Democratic Party over there, didn't do much to help Jeremy Corbyn, thinking that he was a lost cause and the party would go down to defeat. So they kind of, kept their hands, tightly clenched around their wallets. And I can remember your husband dealing with the same, with a party that seemed to be greasing the skids and clearing the path for Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. Very similar. What did you think?
Yes, it was very similar. I think the party apparatus has to, all over the place, needs to be rethinking what their mission, what their purpose is. I think Labor establishment Labor was comfortable, and they were centrist, and they were not living up to the name of Labor, working for the working families. The same is true in the Democrats. You know that there's a battle for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party right now, and there should be for the Republican Party.
But last week during the hearings, I mean, much was paid attention to what Comey was saying about Donald Trump, but in the middle of that was something that got Dianne Feinstein's interest, that Barack Obama's Attorney General, or alleged, might have helped Hillary Clinton, or tried to help Hillary Clinton, that was at least the inference here, by referring to the email scandal as a matter and then poo-pooing an investigation. It got people thinking that maybe the administration at the time was in on doing everything it could to help Hillary Clinton, and not necessarily, as was the case earlier, your husband.
Well, two things. I tend to not look backwards. I tend to look forwards. There's a lot of work right in front of us without having to second-guess what happened before. But I must say that President Obama and Vice President Biden were, they offered their commitment to reserve judgment, to not participate in the primary, and they lived up to their word.
But behind
I don't
the scenes,
know.
They might have been doing something different.
I choose not to believe that. I haven't seen anything. The fact that Jim Comey said something that might be interesting, it's yesterday's news for us.
But neither of you are sort of fading into the sunset here. I mean, you've got this Sanders Institute now, and I was looking at some of the names behind it. They're pretty big names. Robert Reich, you got Danny Glover, Harry Belafonte, you got the young Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She's 32, I think. But is this the beginning? Is that right? All right, I apologize. But is this the nucleus of something for 2020 here?
No, it's a 501c3. We're applying for tax-exempt status. We will not be supporting candidates. What we want to be is it's a trusted resource. Hopefully, will be seen as a trusted resource to find information that is clear, concise, fact-driven, not spin. And what we are trying to do is encourage people, organizations, and the media such as yourself, to pay attention to bold, progressive solutions to economic, environmental, social, and racial justice issues. So if you look at the website, there's quite a bit on there, new data that we have done as original content, but writings by various people, all our fellows, and we hope to be bringing in a lot of other people.
Heavy. I mean, outside of government, and maybe that's by design. It's very eclectic.
Yes.
Again, was that by design?
Yes, yes, it's very eclectic. We do not want it to be inside the Beltway thinking. We do need some inside the Beltway thinking, but we also, we work with the nurses. The National Nurses United just came out with, on our front page, a single payer analysis and a report that you can get a summary of if you just want a little bit of information, but you can delve deep if you want a lot. So, and, you know, we want to have creative people, people out in the community. And that's just the beginning. The fellows are just the beginning. We were at the People's Summit in Chicago this weekend with 4,000 people. And the interest and the exuberance to join us, to participate, was wonderful.
Oh, no, there's great passion for you. Even among Democrats, your husband enjoys an 80% favorability rating. Among independents, close to 60%. So it sounds to me like you guys are suiting up to run again.
Well, it doesn't sound that way to me. It sounds to me like, well, I mean, he lost the primary. And most people, after they lose the primary, leave. They leave the stage. If they lose the election or they're not part of the election, they're not on the stage. You know Bernie, Neil. You've known him for years. He hasn't stopped. He hasn't stopped for a second. He wants to go out and educate the people and tell everybody what is going on.
But maybe he's the only guy who can deliver that message, because right now, I'm looking at those numbers. I mean, his approval rating and his passion he generates, and seeing what the 2 million more young people who voted in Britain, they've obviously learned the difference is getting to the polls and not just the protests, which is something, you know, your husband espoused. So that sounds to me like what's going on over there could strike lightning over here for you guys.
Well, what we hope is his vision will carry the day in 2020, whether he's the candidate or not. He will be playing a major role.
But no one can generate the crowds he was generating, right?
I'm sorry?
No one could generate the crowds he was generating, right?
We don't know, but we do know.
He'd be 79 if he were running again. Is that too old to run?
You know, I think if two things. I think if age was the way it was across the board and everybody at 79 acted the same way, maybe. Bernie exhausts me. I can't keep up with him. The young people in his office can't keep up with him. I don't know whether it was because he was a long-distance runner, but he's got the energy of a 40-year-old and the brilliance like Bernie Sanders.
And he's consistent. I will say that. Whether you agree or disagree with the guy. You know, Jane, one of the things that's happened since we last talked is you guys have joined the 1%. You realize that. With the $795,000 book advance your husband got for Our Revolution, A Future to Believe in, and with some of the other monies on the side and other engagements, recently buying a vacation home, the two of you in Lake Champlain. No one's to deny you that. It's not, you know, a mansion or what have you, but you are now in the 1%. And does that make it tougher to rail against the 1% when you are in the 1%?
No, I think it's ironic that he made the money that you're talking about by writing a book, Our Revolution, which tells everybody what needs to change in the government. And if he's successful, then we'll be paying a lot more. And that's what we want to do. I mean, I think the thing is that he made that money by selling 300,000 books and being on the New York Times bestseller list and having the book translated into several.
The fact of the matter is you're both known to be, you know, tight with a buck, so I don't mean to disparage you. So no matter how much you want, you'll save it. But the reason why I mention it is because Democrats have been railing at President Trump's plans to cut taxes across the board, but it would fall on the rich, and that's what the party says would be unfair. How do you feel about that, and then the timing of all of this?
Well, I do want the burden to fall on those who have more disposable income, including us.
But what should the limit be, you think, Jane? I mean, if it's going to be, you don't want it 35% as the president's espousing. Do you like it where it is now at around 40%? Should it go higher? What?
You know, I'm not the policy person. You can talk to Bernie about that, Neil. But what we want is a progressive
dummy,
tax.
Madam Doctor. I mean, you've probably crunched these numbers. You don't
but I'm
think
not an economist. Bring one of our fellows.
Right?
Bring one of the Sanders Institute fellows on, Stephanie Kelton or Robert Reich or Jeffrey Sachs, to talk about that.
I'll ask Harry Belafonte.
Or Harry Belafonte. But what we do want is to have if you're working 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. If you have less disposable income, the government should not be taking it. You should be able to afford health care. You should be able to afford housing. You should be able to afford to send your kids to college. The taxes should fall on those who have plenty of money and really can't even spend it fast enough.
All right, you got into a little heat recently when you referred to the elections there, saying that Iran could teach the world a thing or two about how to conduct an election. Were you just referring to the participation at 70% who voted, or what were you saying?
Well, two things. I was referring to the fact that 70% of the people of Iran voted, and they voted against the Death to America crowd. They voted for Rouhani, who is the moderate, was the moderate in that election.
Yeah, but a moderate in that country is like calling me thin at a fat camp, right? I mean,
right. I'm not supporting Rouhani, but I just felt that, you know, that's kind of a step forward. That was a turning point. That was a crossroads for Iran.
But you're not afraid,
Iran.
Jane, that'll come back to bite you if you guys get, suit up to fight in the ring? Oh, listen what she said about Iran.
You know what, Neil? If I worried about everything I said, I wouldn't be talking to you or Fox, that's for sure. And I just let the chips fall where they may. I say what I think. I mean what I say. People like it. People don't like it. They can judge.
I think you secretly like talking to us. But, Jane, seriously.
I do, actually.
It was a real pleasure getting a chance to touch base with you. My best to your husband. We're watching all this closely. The Sanders Institute is up and running. We'll